The day that changed everything. They say your life can change in an instant. One moment you're living your routine, thinking you know where you stand, and the next, everything you believed about your world crumbles beneath your feet. I never believed those stories until it happened to me. Until the day my boss looked me straight in the eye and said 4 words that would haunt me forever. "You're fired today." But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have possibly known, was who was standing directly behind me when those words left his mouth. The morning started like any other Tuesday. The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar tune as I walked through the office doors at exactly 8:47 a.m., coffee in hand, briefcase slung over my shoulder. I'd been making this same walk for 6 years, past the same cubicles, greeting the same faces with the same polite nods. Sarah from accounting waved from behind her monitor. Mike from IT was already troubleshooting someone's computer. Everything was perfectly, predictably normal. But there was something in the air that morning. A tension I couldn't quite place. Whispered conversations that stopped when I walked by. Glances that lingered just a second too long. I pushed the feeling down, telling myself I was being paranoid. After all, I'd been the model employee for 6 years. 6 years of perfect attendance. Overtime without complaint. Projects delivered ahead of schedule. I was untouchable, or so I thought. At 2:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. A calendar invite. Meeting with Mr. Harrison, conference room B, immediate. My stomach dropped. Mr. Harrison was the regional director, my boss's boss. In 6 years, I'd maybe spoken to him 3 times and never in a closed-door meeting. I straightened my tie, grabbed my notepad, and walked toward conference room B with what I hoped looked like confidence. The hallway seemed longer than usual, each step echoing in my ears like a countdown. When I reached the door, I could see Mr. Harrison through the glass, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expensive suit pressed to perfection. He was on his phone, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. I knocked gently and stepped inside. "You wanted to see me, sir?" He didn't look up immediately. Just held up one finger, continuing his phone conversation in hushed tones. I stood there, awkward and uncertain, for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds. Finally, he ended the call and turned to face me. "Sit down," he said, his voice carrying a coldness I'd never heard before. I sat. The leather chair creaked under my weight, the sound unnaturally loud in the silent room. Mr. Harrison remained standing, positioning himself directly in front of me like a judge delivering a verdict. His eyes, cold, calculating, devoid of the warmth I'd seen at company parties, locked onto mine. "You know," he began, his voice measured and deliberate, "in my 23 years with this company, I've had to make a lot of difficult decisions. Some keep me up at night, others..." He paused, a cruel smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Others are surprisingly easy." My heart began to race. This wasn't a promotion meeting. This wasn't even a performance review. This was something else entirely, something that made my palms sweat and my mouth go dry. "Sir, if this is about the Morrison account, I can explain." "This isn't about the Morrison account." His voice cut through my words like a blade. "This is about loyalty. This is about trust. This is about understanding your place in the hierarchy of things." I felt the blood drain from my face. "I don't understand." "No," he said, taking a step closer, his shadow falling across the conference table. "I don't think you do. You see, I've been watching you. We've all been watching you. And what we've seen, well, let's just say it's concerning." The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in around me. My 6 years of dedication, my perfect record, my loyalty, none of it seemed to matter in this moment. I was prey, and he was the predator circling for the kill. "You're fired today." 4 words. 4 simple words that shattered my world like glass hitting concrete. I sat there stunned, my brain struggling to process what I'd just heard. This had to be a mistake. A misunderstanding. A joke in incredibly poor taste. "Sir, There must be some mistake. I've never had a bad review. My numbers are excellent. There's no mistake." His voice was final, absolute. "Security will escort you out. You have 30 minutes to clean out your desk. Your access cards have already been deactivated." The words hit me like physical blows. 6 years of my life gone in an instant. No explanation. No chance to defend myself, no mercy. I felt something inside me break. Not just my heart, but something deeper. My faith in fairness. My belief that hard work mattered. My trust in the system I'd served so faithfully. But then I heard it. a sound that made both of us freeze. The soft creak of the conference room door opening behind me. "Well, well, well," came a voice I recognized immediately, a voice that changed everything. "Isn't this interesting?" I turned in my chair, my heart hammering against my ribcage, and there she was. Standing in the doorway like an angel of reckoning, her designer heels clicking against the polished floor as she stepped into the room. Margaret Chen, the company's chief executive officer. The woman who'd built this company from a startup in her garage to a multi-million-dollar empire. The woman whose approval could make careers and whose displeasure could end them. The woman whose daughter I'd been secretly dating for 8 months. Mr. Harrison's face went from confident to confused to terrified in the span of 3 seconds. "Ms. Chen, I wasn't expecting... This is just a routine personnel matter." "Routine?" Margaret's voice carried the kind of authority that made grown men reconsider their life choices. She walked around the table, her eyes never leaving Harrison's face until she was standing directly beside my chair. "Firing one of our top performers without cause seems routine to you?" I could barely breathe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Margaret wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to know about the firing. She wasn't supposed to know about anything, ma'am. "With all due respect," Harrison stammered, beads of sweat forming on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "This employee has been what exactly?" Margaret's voice could have cut steel. "Because I've been reviewing his file for the last hour, and all I see is 6 years of exemplary service. Perfect attendance. Consistently exceeding quotas. Glowing reviews from every supervisor he's ever worked under." She paused, letting the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. "Every supervisor except you." The pieces began falling into place in my mind like dominoes. The whispered conversations. The sideways glances. The sudden meeting. This wasn't about my performance at all. This was about something else entirely. You see, what I hadn't told anyone, what I couldn't tell anyone, was that for the past 8 months, I'd been falling in love with Emily Chen. I'd met her at a coffee shop downtown, completely by chance. She was struggling with her laptop, cursing under her breath at a presentation that wouldn't cooperate. I'd offered to help, and one thing led to another. For months, we'd kept our relationship secret. She insisted on it, and I understood why. Dating the boss's daughter was complicated enough without adding the CEO into the equation. But secrets have a way of coming to light, especially in an office where gossip spreads faster than wildfire. "You know what I think happened here?" Margaret continued, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I think someone got a little too comfortable with their authority. I think someone forgot that this company has a very strict policy against retaliation and harassment. And I think someone is about to learn a very expensive lesson about the consequences of their actions." Harrison's face had gone from red to white to a sickly green color. "Ms. Chen, I assure you this has nothing to do with..." "With what?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "With the fact that my daughter has been dating this man for 8 months? With the fact that you've been making his life miserable ever since you found out? With the fact that you've been systematically sabotaging his projects and undermining his authority in hopes of forcing him to quit?" My mouth fell open. She knew. She'd known all along. The conference room door opened again, and Emily stepped inside. Her face was flushed, her eyes bright with anger and determination. She looked at me, then at her mother, then at Harrison, who now looked like he might actually faint. "I'm sorry I'm late," Emily said, her voice steady despite the obvious emotion behind it. "Traffic was terrible. Did I miss anything important?" Margaret smiled. Not a pleasant smile, but the kind of smile a shark might give right before it strikes. "Oh, Mr. Harrison was just explaining why he felt it was necessary to fire one of our most valuable employees without cause, without documentation, and without following any of the proper procedures outlined in our employee handbook." "Interesting," Emily said, pulling out her phone. "Because I have about 30 voice messages and emails from various department heads asking why they're losing their best cross-departmental collaborator. Apparently, word travels fast around here." I sat there completely overwhelmed by what was happening. 3 hours ago, I was just another office worker grinding through another Tuesday. Now, I was at the center of a corporate showdown that would probably become office legend for years to come. But more than that, I was seeing a side of Emily I'd never seen before. The executive, the strategist, the woman who'd inherited her mother's steel spine and razor-sharp intellect. Watching her work was like watching a masterclass in controlled fury. Mr. Harrison, Margaret said, her voice returning to its normal professional tone, you're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You have 15 minutes to clean out your office. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who'd just fired me was now facing the exact same fate, except his termination came with cause, documentation, and witnesses. Harrison's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You can't. I'll sue for wrongful termination. You're welcome to try, Emily said, her smile matching her mother's. Of course, you should know that our legal team has been building a case against you for harassment and creating a hostile work environment for the past 6 weeks. We have emails, recorded phone calls, witness statements from a dozen different employees, and security footage of you deliberately sabotaging project materials. My head was spinning. 6 weeks? They'd been building a case for 6 weeks? Margaret turned to me, her expression softening slightly. I apologize for the dramatics, but sometimes these situations require a certain flair for the theatrical. Mr. Harrison needed to reveal his true nature before we could act decisively. You mean... I struggled to find my voice. This was all planned? Not all of it, Emily said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. We knew he was going to make a move against you, but we didn't know when or how. We had to be ready for anything. The meeting invitation came from my office, Margaret explained. We needed him to feel confident enough to act without thinking through the consequences. We needed him to hang himself with his own rope. I looked back and forth between mother and daughter, these two incredible women who'd just orchestrated one of the most spectacular corporate takedowns I'd ever witnessed. How long have you known? About Emily and me, I mean, Margaret chuckled. About 5 minutes after your first date. You think I don't know everything that happens in my daughter's life? Besides, she came home that night practically glowing. I haven't seen her that happy since... She paused, her expression growing tender. Well, since her father died. Emily blushed, but her grip on my hand tightened. I wanted to tell you she knew, but Mom thought it was better to wait. We needed to see how this would play out naturally. And what a show it was, Margaret said, glancing toward Harrison, who was still standing there like a statue. Oh, you're still here. Security should be arriving any moment to escort you out. I'd suggest using this time to call your wife and explain why you'll be home early today. And every day after this. As if summoned by her words, 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Harrison looked at them, then at us, then back at them. Without a word, he straightened his tie, lifted his chin in a pathetic attempt to maintain some dignity, and walked out of the room like he was heading to his execution. The silence that followed was deafening. So, I said finally, my voice cracking slightly. I'm not fired? Oh, you're definitely getting a promotion, Margaret said with a grin. Regional director has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Of course, you'll have to earn it. I don't believe in nepotism, and neither does Emily. But I do believe in rewarding loyalty, integrity, and the kind of character that stands up under pressure. I looked at Emily, who was beaming at me with such pride and love that I felt my chest tighten with emotion. Did you know this was going to happen today? I knew something was going to happen, she admitted. Mom's investigators figured out that Harrison was planning something big, something that would force you out of the company. We just didn't know exactly what. The firing was his idea entirely. But you were ready for it. We were ready for anything, Margaret said. That's what good leaders do. They prepare for every contingency, protect their people, and strike when the moment is right. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process everything that had just happened. 6 years of loyal service had nearly ended in disgrace. But instead, it had led to vindication, promotion, and the revelation that the woman I loved had been fighting for me all along. There's just one condition, Margaret said, her tone becoming serious again. My stomach clenched. What's that? No more secrets. If you're going to be part of this family, and make no mistake, that's what we're talking about here, then we operate on trust and transparency. All of us, Emily nodded emphatically. She's right. I hated keeping our relationship secret. I hated watching you struggle and not being able to help openly. I hated seeing Harrison chip away at your confidence while I had to pretend I didn't care. It nearly killed me, she continued, her voice thick with emotion. Watching him try to destroy the man I love while having to play the role of the uninvolved executive. Never again, the man I love. The words hit me like a lightning bolt. We'd been dancing around those 3 little words for weeks, both of us too scared to say them first. both of us too worried about what they might mean for our complicated situation. I love you too, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. I have for months. I just didn't know how to say it without making everything more complicated. Margaret smiled, but it was different this time. Warm, genuine, maternal. Love is never complicated. People make it complicated. Circumstances make it complicated. But love itself? Love is the simplest thing in the world. She stood up, smoothing down her skirt with practiced efficiency. Now I have a company to run and a board meeting to prep for. Emily, why don't you show our new regional director to his new office? I think the corner suite will do nicely, the one with the view of the harbor. As she walked toward the door, she paused and looked back at me. Oh, and one more thing. Welcome to the family, officially. And then she was gone, leaving Emily and me alone in the conference room where my world had been torn apart and rebuilt in the span of 30 minutes. Emily moved to the chair next to mine, taking both of my hands in hers. Are you okay? I know this was a lot to process. I laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time all day. Okay? I went from fired to promoted, from secret boyfriend to official family member, and from crushing defeat to total victory in less than half an hour. I'm pretty sure I'm having some kind of breakdown, but in the best possible way. It's been a long time coming, Emily said softly. Mom and I have been working on this for months. Harrison wasn't the only problem. There were several managers who thought they could take advantage of their positions, who thought they could treat people badly without consequences. Today was just the beginning. The beginning of what? A culture change. A reminder that this company was built on integrity and respect, and that anyone who can't operate within those values doesn't belong here. Her eyes sparkled, with the same dangerous intelligence I'd seen in her. Mothers. Harrison was just the first domino to fall. We sat there for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened settling around us like dust after an explosion. I thought about the morning, how normal and predictable it had seemed. I thought about all the mornings that would come after this, and how different they would be. So what happens now? I asked. Emily grinned, and for the first time all day, I saw the playful, mischievous woman I'd fallen in love with at that coffee shop 8 months ago. Now you get to meet the rest of the family. And trust me, if you thought today was intense, wait until Sunday dinner. I groaned, but I was smiling too. Your family doesn't do anything halfway, do they? Would you want us to? I considered this, thinking about everything that had just transpired. The calculated precision, the perfect timing, the absolute commitment to justice and protection of the people they cared about, the fierce loyalty and unwavering support. No, I said finally. I really wouldn't. As we walked out of that conference room together, hand in hand for the first time in our workplace, I realized that sometimes the worst day of your life can also be the best day of your life. Sometimes getting fired is actually the first step toward everything you never knew you wanted. Sometimes the person standing behind you isn't just a witness to your downfall, they're the architect of your rise. And sometimes, just sometimes, love really can conquer all. Even corporate politics, office bullies, and the fear of complicated family dynamics. 6 years ago, I'd walked into this building as a hopeful new employee, eager to prove myself and build a career. Today, I was walking out as a regional director, a future son-in-law, and a man who'd learned that the most powerful force in any workplace isn't fear or manipulation or political maneuvering. It's having people who believe in you, stand behind you when the world tries to tear you down. The next morning, I walked through those same office doors at 8:47 a.m., coffee in hand, briefcase over my shoulder. But everything was different now. Sarah from accounting didn't just wave. She came over to congratulate me on my promotion. Mike from IT wasn't fixing computers. He was updating my access credentials for the executive systems. And in the corner suite with the harbor view, Emily was waiting for me with 2 cups of coffee and a stack of files for my first day as regional director. Ready for this? She asked, gesturing toward my new office, my new life, my new future. I looked at her, this incredible woman who'd fought for me, believed in me, and loved me even when I didn't know how to love myself. I looked out at the harbor where boats were heading out to sea for adventures unknown. I looked back at the office full of people who now looked at me with respect instead of pity. Yeah, I said, taking her hand and squeezing it tight. I think I'm ready for anything. And for the first time in my entire adult life, I actually meant it.